All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling George B. McClellan, a pivotal figure in the Civil War.
Oh yeah, McClellan. Quite the character.
To understand him, we're going straight to the source. His memoir, McClellan's own story.
Written after the war.
Exactly. So we're getting his perspective, unfiltered.
Raw and personal, always interesting.
Almost like we're eavesdropping on history.
Definitely. Hearing it straight from the horse's mouth.
And one thing that pops out immediately is
His what?
his almost eerie foresight.
You're talking about how he predicted the war.
Yeah.
Even before it started.
Yeah. He even put, get this, a war clause in his house lease back in 1860.
Wow, he's that sure.
Seems like it. I mean, that's taking your predictions pretty seriously.
That's McClellan for you. Always thinking ahead. And that foresight really shaped him.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
He saw himself as this, almost like a man of destiny.
because he saw the war coming.
Right. Like
Yeah.
he understood what was on the horizon better than others.
Interesting. So pre-war, he wasn't a general, though, right?
Nope, railroad president.
Railroad president. What does that tell us about his leadership?
Well, running a railroad, it's all about organization, strategy, logistics.
Skills that would come in handy during a war, right?
Sure. Organizing and supplying a massive army, that's no small feat.
So maybe those business skills actually translated to the battlefield.
Could be. McClellan himself believed his outside experience gave him an edge.
Not everyone appreciated that, did they? Especially in Washington.
Ah, yes, the political battles. McClellan definitely butted heads with the Lincoln administration.
Especially with Stanton, the Secretary of War, right?
Big time. Their personalities and philosophies were like oil and water.
I imagine McClellan's strong personality didn't help.
Well, he saw himself as the savior, the indispensable man. That can create friction.
So right off the bat, a tense relationship with folks like Stanton.
Oh, it was more than tense. McClellan believed Stanton was actively working against him. Yeah, withholding troops, resources, even accused him of sabotaging the Peninsula Campaign later on.
Wow, sabotage. That's a big accusation.
McClellan felt Stanton was constantly meddling, making decisions based on politics, not strategy.
So a deep distrust from the start.
Put mildly, this tension between military and political leaders, it really impacted the war's course.
Now, put yourself in McClellan's shoes for a second. War breaks out. He's suddenly in command.
Huge responsibility. What a pressure cooker.
What kind of challenges did he face immediately?
Well, imagine this. Demoralized army after that first Bull Run defeat. Capital city vulnerable.
And everyone looking to him for answer.
Right. McClellan felt that weight heavily. He talks about it in the memoir, the constant scrutiny.
So immense pressure to deliver, but also
Limited resources, inexperienced troops, and politicians breathing down his neck.
how do you handle all that?
Well, he focused on his strength, organization.
He was known for that, meticulous planning. Right?
Absolutely. Believed a well-trained, well-equipped army was key to success.
So building an army from scratch while also dealing with all these external pressures.
Quite the juggling act. But he dove in head first. Training, supplies, strategizing.
Demanding but inspiring, it sounds like.
He was. A real talent for logistics, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But was it enough? That's what we'll uncover as we dig deeper into George B. McClellan.
All right, we're back and still digging into McClellan's world. Last time, we left him with this huge task, building an army from scratch.
And what really strikes me reading his memoir is this clash between his meticulous planning and the absolute chaos of war.
You're right. He loved the details, loved organizing, but even the best plans can go out the window on the battlefield.
Oh, absolutely.
He's got these grand strategies in mind, but then there's supply shortages, meddling politicians, and of course the enemy doing their own thing.
And don't forget the human element. Thousands of soldiers, each with their own strengths and weaknesses.
Keeping them motivated, trained, that's a whole other challenge.
It is. And McClellan, he seemed to feel this deep connection with his troops.
He did. He constantly refers to them as my men in the memoir.
Almost like they were an extension of himself.
Yeah.
Which, speaks to his confidence, but maybe also a blind spot.
How so?
Well, delegating, trusting others to carry out his vision, that seemed to be tough for him.
I see. So we have McClellan, the brilliant organizer, drilling his troops, mapping out campaigns.
But also, always battling against this unpredictable reality of war.
Things rarely go according to plan, right?
Right. And that's the core of McClellan's experience. This constant push and pull between control, order, and then the chaos of the battlefield.
And then, of course, you've got those political pressures from back in Washington.
Oh, yeah. Never forget those.
Always feeling undermined, especially by Stanton, like they were setting him up to fail.
That feeling, that betrayal, it runs deep in his narrative. He saw enemies not just in the Confederates, but in his own government.
Wow, fighting a war on two fronts, one against the South, the other against his own political rivals.
Exactly. And that feeling, that constant battle, it shaped everything he did. His leadership, his decisions.
So let's talk about some of those decisions. He led several major campaigns, right? Like the Peninsula Campaign.
Ah, yes, aiming to capture Richmond. Bold move.
A huge gamble, but there was strategy behind it.
Absolutely. Controlling the James River, that was key for him. Cut off Confederate supplies, better position to attack Richmond.
Smart, but then it all kind of unravels. He complains about lack of support, delays in getting reinforcements, and constant Confederate attacks.
And let's not forget, he was facing Robert E. Lee, no slouch on the battlefield.
That's right, Lee was a tough opponent. And then the 7 days battles, that was brutal.
A series of clashes, incredibly bloody, and ultimately forced McClellan to retreat.
That must have been devastating. Not only the military loss, but his relationship with Lincoln and Stanton, that really went downhill.
He felt abandoned, like they denied him what he needed to succeed. And the bitterness, the resentment, it's clear in his memoir.
Blaming them for the failure. But even after that setback, he wasn't done, was he?
Nope. They brought him back after the Union got pummeled at the Second Battle of Bull Run.
Shows you how valuable his skills were, even to those who didn't always agree with him.
They needed someone to pick up the pieces, get the army back in fighting shape.
So McClellan, despite all the complaints and finger-pointing, still the best man for the job in their eyes.
Apparently so. And this leads to his second chance, which sets the stage for Antietam.
One of the most significant and bloodiest battles of the entire war.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A turning point. Really, it was a brutal fight, incredibly costly, but a strategic win for McClellan and the Union.
Halting Lee's advance, forcing those Confederates back into Virginia. But even in victory, there's controversy, right?
Oh, there always is with McClellan.
He claims he could have won decisively if Washington had sent reinforcements faster.
Classic McClellan, blaming others. But it highlights that constant tension between military strategy and politics.
He felt his military decisions were sound, just undermined by political meddling. So we've got this complex picture emerging.
We do.
McClellan, brilliant, meticulous, beloved by his men, but also
Egotistical, prone to blaming others, always at odds with his superiors.
it's this mix that makes him so fascinating, right?
It does. Great and flawed all at once.
And his story isn't over yet. Next time, we're tackling his final removal from command and his lasting legacy. Stay tuned. All right, back for the final chapter of our McClellan deep dive. We've seen his rise, his struggles, and now we're at his fall from grace. That final removal from command.
Yeah, and this is where his memoir gets really juicy. It's like all the gloves come off.
Oh, he's not holding back.
Not at all. You can feel the bitterness, the resentment towards the Lincoln administration, especially towards Lincoln himself and Stanton.
So it's more than just a historical account at this point, right?
It's a bit of score settling, for sure. He's using his story to defend his legacy, his actions.
Makes sense. But hold on, didn't he just win a pretty big victory at Antietam? Why get rid of him after that?
Well, that's the McClellan conundrum, isn't it? Brilliant organizer, strategist, but also cautious. Maybe too cautious for Lincoln's liking. After Antietam, Lincoln felt McClellan was dragging his feet, not pursuing Lee's army aggressively enough.
Missing an opportunity.
Exactly. A chance to really crush the Confederates. That's how Lincoln saw it. So you've got this clash of styles, personalities. Lincoln wanted action. McClellan was more methodical.
And that, combined with their already rocky relationship, spelled the end for McClellan.
Plus, you can't forget the political games in Washington. Lots of maneuvering going on behind the scenes.
So McClellan's out, never held another field command for the rest of the war.
Nope, sidelined.
And reading his memoir, you really feel that sting, that sense of betrayal. He genuinely believed he was the only one who could save the Union.
He did. And he goes to great lengths to prove it, highlighting every accomplishment, downplaying setbacks, and definitely blaming others for any failures.
But even with that bias, it gives us a valuable look into leadership during wartime. The immense pressure, the scrutiny, those politicians second-guessing every move.
Exhausting, I bet.
It must have been. And yet, through it all, this unwavering belief in his own abilities. He was convinced it was his destiny to lead the Union to victory.
Almost like a tragic hero in a Greek play, brought down by his own ambition and the scheming of his rivals.
So how do we remember McClellan? Brilliant general treated unfairly, or a flawed leader who couldn't live up to the hype?
I think it's more complicated than that. He made huge contributions, especially organizing the Army of the Potomac.
Yeah.
But, yeah, mistakes were made. And his personality, that didn't always help.
His memoir, as biased as it is, really helps us understand him, his motivations, his fears, his frustrations, and that unshakable belief in his own righteousness.
It's fascinating. You almost feel bad for him even while recognizing his flaws. He was a man of his time, caught in this incredible whirlwind of history.
So as we wrap up our McClellan journey, I keep coming back to this question. What if? What if Lincoln had supported him more? What if he had more time to prove himself? Would things have turned out differently?
Great question, and one historians still debate today. We can't rewind history, but thinking about those what-ifs really helps us grasp the complexities of the Civil War, the choices made, and the individuals who made them.
And that's what's so amazing about history, right? It makes you think critically, see different sides, and grapple with questions that still resonate today.
Absolutely. McClellan's story, with all its drama and controversy, gives us this window into those big questions: leadership, ambition, and the human cost of war.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of George B. McClellan. We hope you learned something new, maybe even left with some new questions to ponder. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world.